Before the flood, the earth was not primitive. It was advanced. Cities, technology, forbidden knowledge, and beings that were not fully human ruled the world. But all of it was erased as if it had never existed. And what if I told you that the Book of Enoch reveals the existence of 7 complete civilizations before Noah? Civilizations that knew too much. Civilizations that touched secrets that even modern science cannot explain. Hold on to this, because in the end everything will connect. If you leave before the climax, you will miss the most disturbing part of this entire story. Because what was destroyed by the flood was not just the past. It was a rehearsal for what is about to return in the end times. Before the flood, the earth was not a wild and backward world, but a realm of order, structure, and advanced knowledge that today has been reduced to myth. Ancient traditions describe cities, hierarchies, systems of education, and even centers of spiritual research spread across the planet. Nothing was improvised. Everything followed a design. And here the first belief is shattered. Humanity did not begin in caves. It began in direct contact with higher intelligences. Hold on to this, because in the end, everything will connect. What seemed to be only faith was also science. What appeared spiritual was also technological. And it is this combination that makes everything so dangerous. Enoch says that the heavens were not distant, but integrated with the earth, as if the physical and spiritual worlds coexisted under a single administration. The Watchers did not merely observe, they guided, instructed, and shaped human civilization. They taught how to measure time, how to map the stars, how to work with metals, and how to organize complex societies. In a moment, you will understand why this changes everything. Because when a civilization is born under non-human guidance, it does not evolve naturally. It skips stages, and every shortcut demands a price. The generations before Noah grew up believing that knowledge had no limits and that no spiritual boundaries needed to be respected. The pursuit was not only for progress, but for transcendence, for crossing the line set upon creation. Here the true tension of the story begins. For when humanity seeks to become like the gods, it inevitably touches secrets it cannot control. But the most disturbing part is yet to come, because those secrets did not remain in the heavens, they descended into the flesh. Ancient scriptures speak of a mixture between the celestial and the human, producing lineages that belonged fully to neither world. These beings came to rule, to teach, and to lead, establishing centers of power that would become the foundations of the great pre-flood civilizations. Remember this, because in the end everything will connect. The world was not moving toward chaos because of ignorance, but because of excess knowledge, a knowledge that twisted the very essence of creation. And when the essence is corrupted, judgment becomes inevitable. All of this leads us to a question that still echoes today. Why did God not simply correct the world, but reset it entirely? The flood was not only punishment, it was containment. It was the interruption of a project that was spiraling out of control. Soon you will understand why this changes everything. Because the same seeds that existed before the waters covered the earth are sprouting again in our generation. And this revelation takes us directly to the next mystery. The angels who brought forbidden science and gave rise to the 7 civilizations erased from history. The texts of Enoch reveal that the Watchers did not descend merely as silent observers of humanity. They came as instructors to a race still in formation, shaping its thinking, its science, and its perception of the cosmos. They brought knowledge that went far beyond basic survival, unveiling celestial laws, structures of power, and secrets reserved for the divine realms. None of this was neutral. Everything carried purpose and direction. Every teaching altered human consciousness and shifted boundaries that God had established. Hold on to this, because in the end everything will connect. What looked like evolution was, in fact, a transfer of authority. And when authority changes hands, the story of creation enters a collision course. These beings taught how to work metals, forge alloys, create weapons, and develop technologies that did not belong to that primitive age. They revealed how to extract minerals, shape tools, and build structures that surpassed natural human capabilities. They taught advanced astronomy, the reading of constellations, planetary cycles, and the mathematical language of the heavens. They showed how to align temples and cities with specific stars, how to open symbolic gateways between earth and sky. In a moment, you will understand why this changes everything. Because this was not just science, it was celestial cartography, a map of cosmic government placed into human hands, a heaven that was never meant to be accessed, a heaven that sustained the invisible balance of creation. But the most dangerous knowledge was not in the stars or in the metals, it was in life itself. The Watchers taught formulas of genetic manipulation, crossbreeding of species, alteration of flesh, and artificial extension of existence. They revealed secrets about the body, the blood, and consciousness. The search for immortality began there, long before modern science ever dreamed of it. But the most disturbing part is still ahead, because they did not limit themselves to theory. They applied it. They tested it. They crossed biological boundaries that were never meant to be crossed. And the results of those experiments walked the earth. Beings then arose who were neither fully human nor fully celestial. Hybrid creatures, giants of immense strength, expanded intelligence, and supernatural authority. They dominated territories, founded centers of power, and became the elite of the pre-flood world. They were seen as gods, kings, and heroes. Remember this, because in the end everything will connect. These entities were not symbolic legends, they were real leaders. They were rulers who shaped entire cultures. They were the pillars of the civilizations erased by the flood. Their existence proved that the boundary between heaven and earth had been broken. God did not intervene immediately because the plan had to be fully revealed. Humanity needed to see how far that forbidden alliance would lead. The experiment had to reach its limit so that judgment would be undeniable. Soon you will understand why this changes everything. Because the same pattern is repeating today. Unrestrained science, manipulation of life, fusion between the natural and the artificial, the desire to surpass the human condition. And just as in the past, this advance is preparing the stage for a judgment that will not be merely historical. It will be global. It will be spiritual. It will be cosmic. Ancient writings indicate that before the flood, the earth was organized into 7 great centers of power, each reflecting a specific type of knowledge transmitted by the Watchers. They were not isolated cities, but complete and integrated systems. Politics, science, religion, and technology functioned as a single mechanism. Each civilization operated as a pillar of a carefully architected global project. Nothing arose by chance. Nothing evolved spontaneously. Everything followed an invisible hierarchy. Remember this, because in the end everything will connect. What existed on earth was a reflection of what was already structured in the heavens. A spiritual architecture was being materialized in stone, flesh, and power. The first civilization was devoted to the heavens and the dominion of time. Its leaders deeply understood the movements of the stars, the solar, lunar, and planetary cycles. They knew how to interpret alignments that affected harvests, climates, geological events, and even human behavior. They mastered cosmic calendars and could foresee periods of catastrophe and global change. In a moment, you will understand why this changes everything. Because whoever controls time controls decisions. Whoever controls cycles controls the destiny of nations. And whoever governs time governs the very course of human history. The second civilization became the absolute master of metals, forges, and war. It developed advanced alloys, primitive machines of destruction, and weapons of devastating power. They built colossal fortresses, impregnable walls, and military technologies that guaranteed total supremacy. But the most disturbing part is still to come, because this progress was not meant only for protection. It existed to subjugate, conquer, and eliminate. Violence ceased to be instinct and became science. War began to be planned with logic, calculation, and cold strategy. Extermination became a method. The third civilization plunged into the mysteries of flesh and biological creation. It studied the human body, blood, the codes of life, and the secrets of heredity. It experimented with fusions, crossbreeding, and alterations that went beyond original nature. It sought to create superior lineages, hybrids, and beings with enhanced capacities. Remember this, because in the end everything will connect. It was there that the boundary between creature and creator began to be violated. They did not want only to extend life. They wanted to redefine what it meant to exist. They wanted to recreate humanity in the image of another realm. The fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh civilizations advanced even further into the invisible territories. They studied sound, frequency, vibration, consciousness, and sacred language. They discovered that words, numbers, and tones could alter reality. They worked with portals, dimensional states, and communication between planes. In a moment, you will understand why this changes everything. Because when 7 centers of power operate in perfect alignment under the same spiritual influence, the entire planet enters into resonance. And that resonance shapes culture, mind, technology, and faith. But the authority that united them did not come from God. It came from a power that sought to rewrite creation itself. When the flood came, it did not destroy only ordinary people living their daily lives. It dismantled the spiritual, scientific, and dimensional infrastructure that threatened the very architecture of creation itself. The waters covered advanced cities, centers of knowledge, temples of power, and portals that connected heaven and earth. Everything was submerged, everything was silenced, everything was disconnected at once. It was not merely destruction, it was a complete shutdown of the ancient system. The judgment was proportional to the threat that existed. It was not a regional event, it was global. It was not only physical, it was also spiritual, energetic, and dimensional. Remember this, because in the end everything will connect. God was not reacting to common moral sins like isolated violence or idolatry. He was confronting a systemic corruption of humanity itself. Flesh had been altered, DNA had been tampered with, and the human mind had been reprogrammed by intelligences that did not belong to this world. The spiritual authority of the earth was being transferred into the wrong hands. There was a project in motion, organized, progressive, and irreversible. Soon you will understand why this changes everything. Because the flood was not an emotional act, it was a surgical intervention. It was the only way to prevent the Watcher's plan from reaching its final stage. A total reset was the only possible solution. The waters acted like a veil of cosmic isolation. Everything operating on another frequency was suddenly shut down. Everything that functioned beyond natural law was interrupted. Portals were closed. Spiritual technologies were drowned. Structures of power collapsed. The planet entered silence, like a system rebooted after an invasion. But the most disturbing part is still ahead. Because although the surface was cleansed, not all knowledge was erased. Fragments survived. Codes remained. Memories were preserved in symbols, bloodlines, and traditions. Echoes of that ancient world continued to whisper through time. The great megalithic structures of the post-flood world did not arise from nothing. They are shadows of a former inheritance, rebuilt by men who carried fragments of that forbidden knowledge. Pyramids aligned with the stars, ziggurats pointing toward the heavens, temples that replicate celestial maps. All of this reveals a collective memory that refused to die. Remember this, because in the end, everything will connect. The myths of gods who descended from the sky, taught humanity, and then departed are not coincidences. They are distorted echoes of a real history, a history humanity is trying to remember without fully understanding what it is remembering. Noah preserved pure genetics, but contaminated knowledge sought to return through the shadows. Bloodlines carried symbols, traditions guarded fragments, cultures preserved encoded stories. Soon you will understand why this changes everything. Because history is not a straight line, it is cyclical. What was interrupted once is attempting to rise again. Only now, through technology, science, and artificial intelligence. The ancient project is being rewritten with modern tools, and what was judged in the past is quietly preparing to reappear in the present. Today, humanity is once again touching the very same boundaries that triggered the flood. Genetic manipulation, the fusion of man and machine, the pursuit of immortality, control over the mind, the body, time, and creation itself. Science is advancing, but the spiritual frontier is the same as it was before. What was once done through angelic knowledge is now being done through code, chips, and laboratories. Hold on to this, because in the end everything will connect. What the Watchers began with celestial beings is now being continued with human technology. The method has changed, but the spirit of the project is identical. The goal remains the same, to transcend the human condition and rewrite the limits established by God. Modern science believes it is opening entirely new paths, but in reality, it is rediscovering ancient ones. Every advance in artificial intelligence, transhumanism, biotechnology, and the engineering of consciousness echoes the forbidden teachings described in ancient texts. Humanity seeks to create life, consciousness, and eternity outside the divine order. Soon you will understand why this changes everything. Because the world is being prepared for a new kind of union. No longer between angels and women, as in the days of Noah, but between humanity and something it does not fully understand. A fusion that alters identity, nature, and purpose. The Bible declares, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. This statement carries a prophetic weight that goes far beyond moral corruption. It points to the repetition of a structural pattern, a globalized world, an elite with access to hidden knowledge, and a humanity being transformed. But the most disturbing part is still ahead, because the text is not speaking only about sin, it is speaking about the transformation of creation itself. It speaks of boundaries being violated once again. It speaks of a generation that will touch the same fire that destroyed the ancient world. Revelation describes a final system that controls buying and selling, identity, and worship. A unified, technocratic, monitored, and spiritually hybrid world. A system that merges politics, economy, science, and religion into a single global structure. Remember this, because in the end everything will connect. The civilizations before the flood were only the prototype. They were local, fragmented, and limited. The final system will be worldwide, integrated, and absolute. What was once experimental will then become definitive. Now everything begins to make sense. The past was not erased, it was archived. The waters did not destroy the project. They only interrupted it. And today that archive is being reopened before our eyes. The same ambition, the same desire to surpass God, the same attempt to recreate humanity. The question that echoes through the centuries is unavoidable. If God judged the world once because of this pattern, what will happen when it is completed again? And what if this time the judgment does not come in the form of water, but of fire?